Hello everybody, Mobius Y here with another video for Stellaris Console Edition. So this video is going to be a pretty long one as there's a lot of stuff that I need to cover, and it's a long overdue video as well. It's redoing my old Your First Game video, as with the update to version 2.2 in Stellaris Console Edition. I felt the need to redo these as a lot of the core mechanics in the game are so drastically different from when I did those old videos that is why I rendered them completely obsolete by this point. So this particular video has all of the DLC up to and including Distant Stars installed and active at the time of recording this video. So I expect it will still be relevant for quite some time, even after we get future DLCs, because a lot of the core mechanics in version 2.2 are going to be the same. So before jumping into your first actual game in Stellaris Console Edition, I recommend going into the settings screen and adjusting some settings, both for the gameplay and for the sounds. The first up thing that I believe you should change is the autosave. You can have this set to never autosave and only save when you tell the game to. But by default, you can actually set it to either saving every in-game month, every 3 in-game months, every 6 in-game months, or every in-game year. Set it to annually because an in-game year can see a lot of stuff happen, especially in the later portions of the game. But this will also allow it to where if you felt like you kind of made a mistake or you want to go back a little bit, you can go back and check out some previous autosaves and skip back a few in-game years to an earlier point in the game, if you'd so decide to. The other thing that's super important is adjusting the safe area. This will actually adjust the size of the HUD in the game. It's important that it is small enough where you can see everything on the screen at one time. I've heard it both in person and online that some people had difficulty understanding everything that was going on, and that's because that they could not see all elements of the heads-up display, which gives all sorts of status information and whatnot about your empire. So it's important that you have it small enough where you can see everything that is going on. The other thing too is going over to the sound screen. Adjust these as you see fit. I definitely recommend having the advisor volume high enough where you can hear it plain as day. Because you will get some important notifications from the advisor about various events or completing various projects and whatnot, especially if you have the tutorial enabled. And also turn down the ambient volume really low. I only have it 1 tick above muted. You can turn it up a little bit higher than that, but I recommend putting it down really low because there are some things in the game where when you zoom in on various portions of the galaxy or various things within your empire, the noise that they are generating is just so loud and overpowering, especially if the ambient volume slider is higher. That is very difficult to hear anything else that's going on. So drop that down really low, and hopefully you can get by. And I don't want people figuring out the hard way why I recommend doing that, as I personally find it super annoying. Now, this is being recorded on Xbox One, so when I talk about pressing certain buttons, they do the same things on the PlayStation as well. It's just when I refer to a certain button, you'd have to understand that on the PlayStation, it's referred to differently. So, for example, left trigger and right trigger on the Xbox are L2 and R2 on the PlayStation. Left and right bumper are L1 and R1. Clicking the left stick is L3. Clicking the right stick is R3. And the various action buttons, the X button on Xbox is in fact square on the PlayStation. The Y button is triangle. The B button is circle. And the A button is X on the PlayStation. The options, or the start button I should say, is the options button on PlayStation, and the back button is usually the touchpad on the DualShock 4, which you have to click down on. Apart from that, the left and right stick are still the same and behave the same, and of course you also have the directional pad, which behaves the same between games. Now, as I play Stellaris Console Edition, I use the default control scheme, so for the sake of this video, when I've referred to what a button does, I am referring to if you have it set to the default control scheme. I think it's comfortable and very intuitive for Stellaris Console Edition. For a grand strategy game of this scale, it actually works quite well, so I recommend keeping it on the default scheme. So for your first game, or should I say for starting a new game, you're going to go and select the new game option in the main menu, and you are given 3 additional selections from there. You can select an empire where you can actually choose one of the many pre-made empires that comes with the base game, and they each have their own empire set up, their own backstory, and their own species history. Or you can in fact select a custom empire that you have made in a previous game and play with that if you have created one. The randomized empire option gives you a completely random set of empire creation selections. I highly recommend avoiding it at all costs until you've gotten numerous games under your belt in Stellaris Console Edition and you have a thorough grasp of the mechanics, because you can get a very bad empire setup by selecting a randomized empire and not really fully understand how to compensate for it. And the create new empire option, this is one of the gems of Stellaris, in my personal opinion, is customizing your empire to look the way you want. You can choose their own appearance, and you can even select things like their physical traits that determine the different bonuses and deficiencies that their species has. You can even choose the various ethics that the entire empire values, as well as the civics that drive that empire towards its own personal progress. It's one of the awesome things about Stellaris. I do recommend trying it out, but for the sake of your first game, I don't think you want to jump into it right away. So just go with the select empire option. And you can see that I have a bunch of custom empires in my list. They will show up in this list as you create more custom empires as well. But if I skip down past them, and all the way down to the United Nations of Earth, these are the pre-made empires that come with the game. And there's a lot more different empires if you have all the DLC installed. For example, you can see some machine empires like the Earth Custodian ship, and additional empires like hive minds such as the Ixodar Star Collective, so on and so forth. And you can go all the way down this long list of pre-made empires down to the meme-worthy Blorg commonality. For the sake of your first game, though, I do recommend picking one of the human empires, which is either the United Nations of Earth or the Commonwealth of Man. Now, the United Nations of Earth, they're more about peaceful diplomacy and coexistence with others, and they believe in equality for all. So they're for more if you want to interact with various negotiations with other AI empires and AI civilizations, whereas the Commonwealth of Man, they're a lot more militaristic and aggressive. So if you don't wish to engage in diplomacy and you would rather simply enact your superiority over the filthy xeno scum of the galaxy, then pick the Commonwealth of Man. They have a much more aggressive militaristic approach to playing the game. For the sake of this video, I'm going to go with the United Nations of Earth, and I recommend you do the same as well. So you simply move a cursor over the empire in question. You can see a portrait of the species. There's a little biography box in the bottom right, which gives some backstory to the species. So simply select them by pressing the A button, and now you are taken to the game details section. I do recommend that most of your settings start off as default, and you can hit the X button or the square button to reset to default. But for the sake of your first game, we're going to change a couple of things. Keep it at a medium-sized galaxy of 400 stars. Change the galaxy shape to a 2-armed spiral galaxy. For AI empires, I suggest dropping that down to about 4. This ensures that you still will encounter some AI civilizations in the galaxy, but it's not so many where it feels like they're kind of encroaching on your territory, and it's not so few that the galaxy feels empty and boring. Advanced AI starts, drop those down to off. This will make sure that none of the AI empires have a significant advantage over you at the start of the game. Fallen empires are very old, very technologically advanced empires that behave differently from regular AI empires. I feel it's important for new players to still encounter them and experience what it is like interacting with them in your first game, so definitely have this either set to 1 or 2. For the sake of this video, I'm going to have it set to 1. I don't expect to encounter one before the end of this video. Marauder empires are special, non-aligned raider empires that can actually attack their neighbors for resources. They are only available if you have the Apocalypse DLC. I I don't necessarily recommend having any in the galaxy for your first game, but if you want to experience them, set it just to 1 to reduce the likelihood that one spawns right next to you and causes you problems throughout the game. The tech tradition cost slider, the lower this value is, the faster you unlock new technologies and traditions, which are the 2 major points of progress for every galactic empire. If you put this slider higher, especially above the default 1.0 value, then it will take you longer to research new technologies and unlock new traditions, and essentially make the game itself take longer. For habitable worlds, I suggest putting this up to about the 2 times value. This makes more habitable worlds be generated in the galaxy at the start of the game, so you have an easier time finding new colonies to colonize and add to your empire. Primitive civilizations and crisis strength, probably just leave those default. The other ones you definitely want to change are the mid-game and end-game start year. This determines the earliest point in the game that major events can happen, major game-changing events. The mid-game start year, I suggest adding a couple years to that, say 50. Turn it up to 2350, and for the end game start year, turn that up to either 2450 or 2500, just to give yourself more time to familiarize yourself with playing the game and what you need to do as the game progresses before some major events can happen that could possibly threaten your empire. For the victory year, I wager you're going to be playing your first game for quite some time, but not too long. Personally, I only play the same game for about 300 to 400 in-game years before I get bored and restart with a new one. But if you want to stick with the first game a lot while you're learning, set the victory year to 3000. That's 800 in-game years. That's actually a very long time to play the game, and it should give you plenty of time to learn a lot of the basic mechanics in the game. The difficulty is defaulted at Ensign. You can set it down to Cadet, which is even easier. Higher difficulties offer bigger bonuses to AI empires in terms of their production and whatnot, so they can learn things like technologies quickly and build up big military fleets pretty early. Personally, I only play on Grand Admiral these days, but for your first game, you definitely want it on either Cadet or Ensign. For the sake of this video, I'm going to set it to Cadet. Scaling difficulty, keep that off. AI aggressiveness, drop that down to low. This decreases the likelihood that a hostile AI empire that considers itself superior to you will in fact attack you. So you'll have more time to kind of sit back, build up your defenses, build up your military strength in order to possibly put yourself more on equal footing with hostile empires. Empire placement, this one really trips up some new players sometimes. If you have this set to clusters, it's more likely that you will have some AI neighbors spawning literally right next to you. So change this to random so that there is a much more even dispersal of the AI empires throughout the galaxy, giving you a little bit more leg room to kind of learn the early stages of the game and expand your own empire throughout the galaxy. There's a few more settings that I recommend changing. Advanced neighbors, keep that off. Hyperlane density, abandoned gateways, wormhole pairs, leave those default. Keep guaranteed habitable worlds set to 2. The last one you really want to look at is Iron Man mode. With Iron Man mode on, there is only one save file for the game, and it overwrites itself every in-game month that passes, and it saves every time you decide to quit the game and take a break. This is the only way to make the game eligible for achievements. I recommend playing with the first game on because there are some easy achievements that you can get even in your first game, but if you want, you can set it to off so that you can have multiple save files at different stages of the game. If you wish to go back to an earlier portion of the game because you feel you've made a mistake, it's a lot easier to do that. For the sake of this video, I'm going to leave it set to off. So these settings can be tailored any time you start a brand new game to however you please to give yourself a completely different experience, giving yourself a different size galaxy, more AI empires, more fallen empires, different difficulty, etc., etc. I suggest playing around with them in future games to get an idea of how they actually impact the game itself. So now with the game's settings chosen, I'm going to hit the A button, or this would be X on the PlayStation, and it asks, are you sure you want to start with these settings? I'm going to press A again to confirm, and now in this loading screen, the galaxy is in fact being procedurally generated. No galaxy in Stellaris is ever the same, and I think that's one of the major gems of Stellaris and why it's so replayable, because no game is ever the same. So whenever you start a new game, you're given this box indicating what empire you're playing as, what its species is, and the various ethics and civics that drive your empire's progress, as well as a blurb on the right This text box on the right is basically a history of your species. It's just flavor text. It doesn't really mean too much of anything. You can read it if you wish. Simply scroll up or down by pressing the right stick. And when you are done, press the A button and you begin. Okay, so once you're actually in the game, this is when you really want to go back in and adjust the safe area to a suitable size. I have it at just the right amount. Thankfully, the biggest size is just enough for me to see the entirety of the heads-up display on my television, so I'm quite thankful for that. But if you need to make it smaller, do so now. This is the easiest time to do it. Now, speaking of the HUD, there are 4 different sections to the HUD, and each section of the HUD can actually be accessed by pressing the D-pad. So if you want to go to the left section of the HUD, you press left on the D-pad. If you want to go to the top section, you press up on the D-pad, so on and so forth. The same for the right and the bottom sections. You can do those at any time, and it's super convenient. The other controls to immediately familiarize yourself with is moving the camera around. You do that with the left stick. You can rotate or adjust the camera's angle by pushing around on the right stick. You can see that I'm rotating the camera around that cursor that is in the middle of the screen. And you can zoom in and out by pressing the left trigger to zoom out and pressing the right trigger to zoom in. So that's L2 and R2 on the PlayStation. Now, as you'll see, as you move the cursor around, just moving it close to something like a planet or a ship that you control is enough for you to be able to select it. You'll see the little orange arrow icon appears. Then you can press the A button to select the object in question that it is in fact pointing at. And you can do the same for ships that are under your control. For example, I'm going to choose these little corvettes, these little military ships that we have at the start of the game, and now I can give them commands. So using the camera is important to selecting various objects of interest so that you can study them a little bit further. Another major aspect of camera control is switching between system view and galaxy view. To do this, you merely click the right stick, or R3 on the PlayStation. So we've zoomed out from looking at our home system of Sol, and I can zoom the camera really far out and we can see the whole galaxy. So as you can see, we're kind of in the eastern areas of this particular galaxy. You can still use the same camera controls to rotate the camera, zoom in and out, so on and so forth. And when you want to go back into a system, a star system, and have a deeper look at a particular star system, you simply have to move your cursor over that star system until the cursor is pointing at it and click the right stick again. And now we are looking back at our home system of Sol. So in our home system, you'll notice there's all sorts of things going on in this particular system. We have a bunch of ships here to control. There's some planets with some stations built around them which are producing resources for us. And of course we have our home planet of Earth. All of these can be looked at by moving the cursor near them, and we get to interact with them in various ways. So we're going to go over the various aspects of the HUD now, starting with the bottom portion. So before actually accessing the bottom area of the HUD, you'll notice in the bottom left, in the orange banner, there is in fact a blinking pause icon, and right next to it is an icon for the Y button, or it would be triangle on the PlayStation, as well as 3 arrows. And then there's the number 2200.01.01. So this lower left area of the screen indicates the passage of time in the game. Right now the game is paused, and you can unpause the game at any time by pressing the Y button, and you'll see that changes to a play button, and the day timer is in fact ticking up. Things in Stellaris take time. It takes sometimes days, months, even years for certain things to complete. Certain technology projects, certain construction projects, so on and so forth. And the 2200.01.10 denotes the current galactic time. Every game of Stellaris starts off the first day of the first month of the year 2200, and you don't actually start progressing time without unpausing the game. So when you unpause the game by pressing the Y button, you can also hold the Y button to change the speed of the flow of time. For example, I have it going at full speed, and you can see the days are going by much more quickly. So I'm just going to pause the game again before we continue too much further. So the actual bottom portions of the HUD and that black banner, this is where major notifications will appear as the game progresses. Right now we have a couple to choose from, and it's to allow us to select our first sets of technologies. We'll go over that in just a little bit here. So as the game progresses and new things happen, such as an AI empire declares war on you, or you have completed a current technology project, or certain construction projects have finished, you'll see notifications in that banner at the bottom of the screen there. Simply press down on the D-pad, select the notification in question, and press A to either address it or simply look at what the notification is bringing to your attention. Another portion of the HUD is at the very top of the screen. This is has a lot to do with things like the status of your empire, but what we're going to go over most importantly is the allocation of resources. So by pressing up on the D-pad, now you can see the cursor is in this top banner where it gives you different status screens, but we're going to start from the left to the right as this begins with the allocation and stockpiling of your resources. There's a lot of different types of resources in Stellaris Console Edition, so it's a lot to take in all at once. So by pressing up on the D-pad, the cursor starts on the yellow icon, which is a C with a lightning bolt through it. And this represents the resource of energy credits. Energy credits is like a galactic currency. You use them to buy and sell various things, and you can use them to enact certain empire-wide decisions that affect your empire's overall production, etc., etc. You can trade with them. They're one of the more important resources in the game and one of the more common ones that you'll experience. What the numbers beneath this symbol mean is that we currently have 100 energy credits stockpiled, and the plus 19 means that we are generating 19 energy credits each month. So if I let this current month elapse and we begin the start of the second month of the year 2200, you'll see that we have jumped up in our stockpile of energy credits. We are generating 27 energy credits per month as denoted by the plus 27, and we now have 127 energy credits stockpiled. So as time progresses, the amount of resources your empire is generating is added to this stockpile at the beginning of every month. So it's important to constantly be trying to increase the amount of resources you're producing every month as the game progresses. The next resource over is the red gem icon. This represents minerals. These are mostly used to construct things like buildings and districts on your planets, which are for your populations. It provides them with housing to live in. It provides them with jobs to work, which will produce resources for your empire. Right now we have 137 minerals stockpiled, and we are generating 37 each month. The next icon over is food. Now this icon really only pertains to organic empires and just a couple machine empires. Machine empires do not require food, but organic empires like our humans do, they do require food in order to sustain themselves. Food represents the basic nutritional sustenance in order for organic species to survive. So it is important that you are maintaining a positive income of food at all times. Right now we have 228 food, and we're generating 28 food each month. Next over is this orange icon. This represents consumer goods. So while food, represents the basic nutritional sustenance for organic survival, consumer goods represents the extra things that keeps people happy. Things like television sets and refrigerators and fancy diamond rings. The resource of consumer goods represents all of those in one consolidated type of resource. So you do need to be producing consumer goods to keep your populations happy. The next one over is probably the most important resource in the game. This is alloys. It's a semi-purplish kind of icon, purple and blue a little bit. Alloys are used to do things like construct ships and construct starbases to expand your empire. By construct ships, I mean things like construct military ships, which are extremely mandatory, especially in the later portions of the game. Alloys are probably the most important resource to be increasing your production of throughout the entire game. Right now we have 115 stockpiled, and we're generating 15 each month. The next one over is in fact a drop down. It represents 7 strategic resources. Strategic resources are extremely valuable and much more rare than the other basic resources that we just went over. They're used to construct more rare technologies and components within your empire. For example, if you wish to outfit your military ships with, say, plasma cannons instead of lasers, you may require some strategic resources in order to do so. When you encounter them, it's in your best interest to acquire them as quickly as possible and add them to your allocation of resources. The next icon is a circular purple icon. This represents influence. Influence is a measure of your company's reach, both within itself, your government's reach within your own empire, as well as its influence on the rest of the galaxy. You use this for important things such as expanding your borders and enacting various empire-wide decisions which give you big bonuses for a long period of time. Influence is always generated over time at a base value of 3 points per month, so it is accrued very slowly, and it's very easy to spend it all very quickly because a lot of things require influence. We'll touch back on that a little bit later. The next one over, as represented by the very light blue, two chain links kind of forming a cross. This is unity. This represents the overall kind of togetherness of your empire's populations. Unity is generated over time, and as you stockpile it, once you reach a certain threshold, you use it to unlock traditions. And traditions are one of the types of empire progression in Stellaris Console Edition. And Unity is how you unlock those traditions. We'll touch on traditions in a little bit once we actually look at the traditions screen. The next icon is a little microscope. This represents your empire's science output. As you can see, it creates a little drop down when I move to it and shows 3 different types of science. There is physics research, society research, and engineering research. Physics is represented by the blue lithium atom, society is represented by the green wireframe sphere, and engineering is represented by the light orange yellowish gear icon. There are 3 branches of science to unlocking new technologies, and the more science that your empire produces each month, the faster you unlock those new technologies. So it is pretty important to be trying to increase the amount of science your empire generates each month so that you can potentially gain a technological advantage over your enemies. And the last 6 things in the top portions of the HUD are basically just status icons. This first one is Empire Sprawl and Administrative Capacity. I have a mechanics video detailing what this is and how it works. If you'd like to check that out at a future time, I recommend doing so. The next one over is the amount of star systems our empire has direct control over. The green globe icon represents how many colonies our empire has. This little icon represents the total amount of population within our entire empire across all colonies and habitats. And the last 2 icons are our starbase capacity and our naval capacity. These are basically how many starbases we can have and the maximum number of military ships we can have. These are not necessarily hard caps. Well, naval capacity is not, whereas starbase capacity is. So you can go over the naval capacity, but do be aware that it does incur additional penalties. So that's the top portion of the HUD. On the right side of the HUD, we have what is called the outliner. By pressing right on the D-pad, you can access it at any time, and this is how you select the various units, namely your military fleets, your civilian ships, your planets, and even your starbases and shipyards. It's a very easy, convenient way for you to access numerous aspects of your empire in order to give them commands and orders. At the bottom here, we have outliner options, and there's really only one option, and that's to hide the outliner. If you select this, whenever you're not in the outliner, it disappears and gives you a little more room on screen to just kind of look at stuff at the edge of the screen. Personally, I like having the outliner visible at all times because there's a lot of important status symbols and information that is shown in the outliner at all times, and I like being able to glance at it whenever I want to. Last, we have the left side of the HUD, and this is a lot of empire control aspects. There's numerous different screens, on the left side of the HUD. So by hitting left on the D-pad, the first screen is the government screen. It just gives an overview of your current empire status and the government that is in control of your empire. The next one down is the contact screen. You open this up to see a list of the alien civilizations you have encountered, and you can select them with the cursor and contact them through this contact screen. The next one is the situation log. This one's not super duper important, but it is pretty important. When we open it up, you'll see that there's actually 3 tabs. This is the situation log screen itself. So this is where important special projects and events will appear. They're kind of like quests in Stellaris. By completing them, you get various bonuses. It could be a chunk of resources, or it could just be various events that give you different bonuses throughout your empire. The next tab over, which we can access by hitting right bumper or R1 on PlayStation, this is the Anomaly Tracker. As we explore the galaxy with science ships, our science ships will discover anomalies. These are unique things that they detect throughout the galaxy, which can be studied further, and they usually net us additional resources. It's pretty important to complete anomalies, but sometimes it's not worth it at the current point in time because it will just take too long for that science ship to research said anomaly. So if you leave it alone, you can come back to it later and use the anomaly tracker to easily find it. And the last tab in the situation log is the victory screen. It just ranks the various empires in the galaxy based on their score, and once the victory year is reached, then the empire with the highest score and the highest ranking will win the game. You can actually keep playing even after the victory year has been reached, but still, it does pop up once you hit the particular victory year you have set it for. So to back out of this, we hit the B button, and we are back in the left side of the HUD. Down to the next screen is the technology screen. This is the most important one to familiarize yourself with when you start your first game in Stellaris Console Edition. So when we open this up, there are two tabs. The first tab is the current research tab. This denotes your current research projects that are unlocking new technologies, which your head scientists are working on. And as I said, there's three branches of science. There is physics, and society, and engineering. And each one gives you different kinds of technologies. Physics tends to focus on the generation of additional energy. It also improves your research speed and gives you access to energy weapons for your military ships, such as lasers, plasma cannons, phase disruptors, and it also improves your deflector shields for defenses. Society technologies tend to improve the overall productivity within your empire and improve the reach of your government. So you get numerous bonuses in here. They also improve the efficiency of your armies as well as your military fleets. Some society technologies allow you to have bigger military fleets, putting more ships in a single fleet, for example, and they also improve various aspects of your planet development. And last, we have engineering. This is basically for building bigger space stations, bigger ships, the acquiring of robots, which you can actually construct once you learn the relevant technologies. And they deal with things like armor components for your ships, as well as kinetic and missile weapons for military ships and their weaponry. So those kind of technologies are accessed through engineering. We're going to select our first technologies in a little bit here, as it's probably the most important thing to pick up on. Technology is the #1 way to progress in Stellaris Console Edition. So we'll come back to this in a second. The next two screens are not terribly important for your first game. The market, it is very useful. I do recommend trying it out, but I'm not going to go over it for the sake of this video. The next one down is cosmography. This one is very useful, but it's more for advanced players, so we're not going to touch on it in this video. Now, the society screen, which is represented by the green and orange face masks, this one is also doubly important. So when I open up the society screen, you can see that there are, in fact, 3 tabs. The first tab is the Traditions tab. This is probably the second most important screen to familiarize yourself with in your first couple games of Stellaris. This is where you unlock your traditions by spending your unity. And there are, as you can see, there are 7 tradition trees. And in order to unlock those tradition trees, you need to acquire unity. The more unity your empire produces, the faster you unlock new traditions. And as you can see, each tradition is broken down into its own separate tree, which gives various bonuses. For example, prosperity increases the generation of resources and decreases the cost of certain things like constructing buildings and whatnot. Supremacy improves the martial prowess of your empire. It does things like improve the fire rate of your ships and improve the efficiency of expanding with your starbase, as well as improve your army damage. The two main tradition trees that I recommend starting off with in pretty much every game of Stellaris is number one, the expansion tree, which improves the speed at which your empire can expand its territory throughout the galaxy, as well as additional things such as the growth of your population, and the discovery tree. The discovery tree can increase the rate at which your science ships explore the galaxy and discover those anomalies, and it actually does give you an overall boost to your research. Each tradition tree gives a bonus when you adopt it, which is the first step to completing the tradition tree. When you adopt the tradition tree, you get a bonus. Each of the 5 traditions gives you yet another bonus. And once you have completed the entire tradition tree, you get what's called a finisher effect, which is yet another bonus. And this only applies once you have completed all 5 of the traditions in that tradition tree. So you get up to a total of 7 bonuses from a single tradition tree. Once you have completed a tradition tree, you also get to unlock what's called an Ascension perk. These are powerful bonuses that can drastically change the way you play the game. For example, you can unlock the ability to construct habitats, which are stations in space that act like small planets. You can grow population there, you can give them jobs, they essentially live in a space station. You can also evolve your species in various ways, either through genetic mastery or even by turning them into cyborgs. There's a lot of options in the Ascension perks, and I recommend experimenting. There are some that are better than others, and once you pick one, you cannot change your selection. So I do recommend choosing wisely, but this is Stellaris, where experimentation is encouraged. Again, the first 2 traditions you probably want to start with is either expansion, if you want to expand your territory more quickly, or discovery, if you wish to explore the galaxy and research things more quickly. So we're going to back out of that screen for now. Next up, we have the people screen, where you can recruit leaders, as well as check out the different species within your empire. I'm not going to touch on it in this video. Next down is the fleets and ships. This is where you have the Fleet Manager and the Ship Designer tabs. The Ship Designer tab you will have to get familiar with in your first game. I definitely do recommend taking a look at it and disabling the auto-generate designs option at the start of every game. Otherwise, it'll be a major pain in the ass to deal with. The next one down is the war screen. It's only available when you are at war, either because you are attacking an enemy empire or they are attacking you. The following one is the claims screen. That's a completely different mechanic, which I'll have to touch on in a separate video. The next one down is Federation. This is for when you form an alliance with a friendly AI empire, a friendly alien civilization, and you create what is called a federation. That is when this screen becomes available. And lastly, you have the different map modes. You can experiment with the map modes if you so choose, and toy around with them as you see fit, but I recommend just leaving them on default for the time being, as it's easy to find additional empires throughout the galaxy. So that was a lot to take in. Hopefully it wasn't too much, but there's still more to do. Before you unpause the game and carry on with your first game, you have a couple things that you need to do. We're going to go back and select our first sets of technologies. So at the bottom of the screen here, you'll see that we have some icons denoting that we do not have a research project in progress for any of our technology, our 3 branches of technology. So we're going to go to the technology screen by hitting left on the D-pad and then going to the technology portion, and now we open up the current research screen. So in order to select our current technology projects, we need to move the cursor over select research under each of the 3 branches, and by pressing the A button, we are presented with a small list of the available technologies that we can research right now. These are semi-randomly generated. They will never pop up the same in your game of Stellaris Console Edition. You might get some very similar choices, but it's very rare that you get the exact same ones in the same order every time you play. For physics, a very good option is quantum theory for our first pick. This increases the amount of physics research that our researchers will produce on our homeworld. Now we're going to choose our society technology. A really good first pick is planetary unification. This increases the amount of monthly unity that our empire generates by a couple points. That's a very good first pick for society. And for engineering, we're going to select this research project. We actually have 2 good options. Both nanomechanics and powered exoskeletons are really good first picks for our first engineering technologies. I'm going to go with nanomechanics because completing nanomechanics increases the amount of engineering research from our researchers on our home planet. So with all these technology projects in progress, you can see that now they show there are 42 months remaining to complete these projects. So that's actually a few in-game years, almost 4 in-game years for each of these projects. And as time goes on, our scientists will get closer and closer to unlocking those technologies and granting us those additional bonuses. The other things we need to do is we need to queue some orders for our civilian ships, namely our science ship and our construction ship. So with our construction ship, we use it to build things into space, and we can either have it build what are called mining stations or research stations. And they are both done, you queue those both up in the same way, but they both behave differently. So mining stations give you resources, namely minerals and energy credits. For example, you can see that this asteroid out here, 134340 Pluto, it is actually producing 3 minerals each month, but we're not getting any of those because the number is white and there's no station around this asteroid. So by selecting the construction ship in the outliner, we hit right on the D-pad, move the cursor over the construction ship, select it, and now we can move the camera cursor next to this asteroid, press the A button, and instruct our construction ship to build the mining station around this asteroid. It will cost 100 minerals for the construction ship to do it, and once it is complete, we will be generating an additional 3 minerals each month. We can also chain orders, and I'm going to chain another order to our construction ship. So you can see the planet Uranus here is also generating some resources for us. It's in fact generating 2 additional points of engineering science, So I can chain an order by moving my cursor over Uranus and pressing the X button. And now you can see the option to build a research station. Research stations produce science. Mining stations produce resources like energy credits and minerals. So I'm going to select the build research station with the A button. And now you can see that the construction ship is still completing construction of this mining station. But as soon as it's done, it will fly over to the planet Uranus and construct this research station to improve our science output. So it's actually finished constructing that mining station. You can see that we are now getting more minerals per month added to our stockpile. So that's one way to improve the generation of resources. And I'm actually going to chain the construction ship to build a research station around Titan, as it is also producing some engineering research. So by hitting the X button, I select build research station, and it will fly over to Titan and construct an additional research station. So that's enough of the construction ship for the time being. The other super important thing to do is have your science ship start exploring the galaxy. So this science ship is in fact manned by what is called a leader. There are different types of leaders in your empire. The most important ones are scientists. They head your research projects and they man your science ships as they explore the galaxy. So by switching back to the galactic view, we can actually order our science ship to fly to a neighboring system and either explore or survey. To do that, we simply move the cursor near an unexplored star system, press the A button, and you can see the available orders are to explore the system, where it will simply fly in, check things out, and then bug out, or we can have it survey the system. I'm going to select survey the system so that the science ship begins flying to that system, and we will actually scan all of the planets and stellar bodies in the system for things like resources and other useful stuff that we can use for our empire. I can in fact chain multiple systems to be surveyed by this science ship by hitting the X button, which chains an order, and select survey system again. And I'm going to chain another order on this third one and have the science ship survey that system as well. So our science ship is going to be busy for a little while surveying all those systems. Now, to actually improve the rate at which you explore the galaxy, you'll want to build more science ships. So that's just an alert saying that our construction ship has finished its orders. So we're going to go back into our home system and select our shipyard. Our shipyard is at what is called a starbase. Starbases are things you construct to extend your empire's territory. You can actually select the shipyard itself by moving your cursor over the starbase, or by selecting the starbase in question in the outliner. So by pressing the A button, we take a look at the starbase screen. And you can see that there are different types of modules and buildings that a starbase can have constructed on it. And one of the modules every starbase can build is a shipyard, which allows you to build ships there. By going to the shipyard tab, we hit the right bumper twice, and you can see on the left-hand side there is a list of ships, that are available for construction at this shipyard. We can build more military corvettes, we can build a construction ship, we can build a colony ship, but right now we're just going to build a science ship. So by moving the cursor over the science ship, we'll see that it will cost us 100 alloys to construct it, as denoted in the lower left of the box, and in the lower right is a symbol with the number 60. That means that it will take 60 in-game days to construct this science ship. Oh, that's another event that our scientists discovered, so I'm going to skip that. So by pressing the A button, you can see on the right-hand side in the shipyard queue that the science ship is in fact under construction, and it will finish in about 40 days now. So there's a lot of alerts popping up as your science ships explore the galaxy. Most of them just have a flavor text box, but if you want to read through them, you're more than welcome to. The game usually pauses automatically once one of these events pops up. Okay, so the Sol system has completed its construction queue, and if we go over here, we can see that we have another science ship. However, when we select it, you'll see that there is no leader assigned. There's two ways to assign a leader to this ship. You can either go to the people screen by hitting left on the D-pad and then moving the cursor down to the people screen, and this opens up the leader list that way. But the easier and more direct way is to select the science ship itself and then hit the right bumper to go over to the Manage tab, and you move the cursor over the Recruit Leader option, which is denoted by the big orange plus in the box. So hit Recruit Leader, and it takes you back to the leader list, and you have an option to select one of the scientists you already have in your empire. But in this case, all these scientists are already busy. This one is leading physics research, this one is leading society research, this one is leading engineering research. And then this last one is in fact commanding the other science ship. So we want to recruit a new leader. And recruiting a new leader, regardless of whether it's a scientist or an admiral or what have you, it costs energy credits to do so. Thankfully, we have more than enough, and each leader has its own randomized trait. So for example, this scientist at the top and this one at the bottom, they're considered experts in their fields of research, so they gain research speed bonuses for relevant technologies. However, I'm going to pick this one as it increases the speed which they research new anomalies that they discover. So I press the A button. That scientist is now added to our leader list as I have recruited her, and I move the cursor over her again and press the A button, and she is now commanding this science ship. I can now send this science ship to survey additional star systems throughout the galaxy to find more resources for us and also to find some habitable worlds for us to colonize. So at the bottom there, you'll see a notification that popped up a little while ago. I've largely been ignoring it. Oh, we have an anomaly. Okay, this is actually a good time to briefly touch on anomalies. As our science ships explore the galaxy, they're going to find these anomalies. And you can see on the right-hand side there, the relative difficulty of this anomaly is challenging, and the time it will take to research it is 300 days. That's almost a year, and that's too long for our scientists to be tied up researching the same anomaly. So to avoid it, or to simply cancel out of researching it, just hit the back button and close out of this screen. If I wanted this scientist to research it, I could hit the A button while the cursor is over the research button, and the scientist would then fly over to this anomaly and spend the necessary amount of time studying it. And when it was finished, we could get some bonuses, or it would start an event chain, for example. But I'm just going to skip it for the time being, as I'm not worried about it. So at the bottom here, you'll see that we got this little icon. It's the green and orange face mask again, showing that we have a tradition unlocked. We have accrued enough unity to unlock at least one tradition. So by clicking that and selecting it with the A button, we open the traditions screen again, and we can select our first tradition tree. As I said, you either want to start with expansion or discovery. For the sake of this video, I'm going to start with discovery. So I select the discovery tree, I press the A button, and with the cursor over the adopt button, I can press the A button again, and it asks me, are we sure we wish to adopt the discovery traditions? This will cost me 300 unity. I hit OK, and now we have adopted the discovery tradition. Now, if that was all I could adopt, then I can simply back out and go back to what I was doing. However, we did accrue quite a bit of unity whilst I was talking, so I can actually adopt a second tradition. Now that I have adopted the discovery tree, the 5 traditions in the tree are available to me. There is a semblance of progression in each discovery tree. Each one is different. So to start things off, I'm going to pick my favorite one here in the top left. This is to boldly go. Yes, it is a reference to Star Trek. This increases the speed that our science ships will survey by 35% and increases the likelihood that they escape from danger. So I simply select the cursor over it, press the A button, and it tells me, are you sure you wish to adopt this? It will cost 350 Unity. By hitting OK, I now have adopted the tradition to boldly go. So that would be extremely helpful for our scientists to survey new systems. Now, why do we want our scientists to survey new systems? Because we want to be able to expand our territory. Our construction ship can also build what is called a starbase. By selecting your construction ship and moving the cursor over a neighboring star system, you can then press the A button and see that you have the option to build a starbase. However, we cannot build one here in the Gauzor system because it is not fully surveyed yet. We can build one over here in the Gyrdix system, because it is fully surveyed. By constructing a starbase in this system, the borders and territory of our empire will in fact expand around that star system, and we can then construct additional things like mining stations and research stations in that system. Or, more importantly, we can colonize a planet in that system. So in Alpha Centauri, you can see that there's a little green globe icon indicating that there is a suitable habitable planet in Alpha Centauri. I want to colonize that planet, and you will too. So in order to do that, you need to take your construction ship, order it to construct a starbase in Alpha Centauri. This will cost some influence and some alloys to do so. Now that it's fully surveyed, our construction ship is flying over here to build its starbase, and you can see that Alpha Centauri 3 has that habitable world icon. By selecting it, you can see that it is available to colonize. Right now we can't do it because it is outside our borders. We have to get it inside our borders to do that, and that is why we need to build a starbase there. Okay, we can actually adopt a new tradition yet again. So now that I have to boldly go, I can also do the databank uplinks tradition. So I'm going to adopt that. This increases the output of our research stations in space by 10%. So that research station we built over here around the moon of Titan is technically now producing 4.4 points of engineering instead of just a flat 4. So it does give us a small bonus. Now with our construction ship over here in Alpha Centauri, building this starbase, we're just going to have to wait for that to finish because there's not too much else that we can do. We could construct another science ship to explore the galaxy. We could construct additional military ships to strengthen our military forces if we so chose. The last thing I really want to go over before the end of this video is how to colonize a new world. And as I said, it's a 3-step process. You first have to send your science ships out to survey the system with a habitable world. And then once it has been fully surveyed, your construction ship needs to build a starbase in that system. And once that system has a starbase and is within your territory, you can then colonize any habitable worlds in that system. Alright, so we've completed our first technology project. And we completed the engineering project, Nanomechanics. So when this pops up, you simply hit the new research option, and you're given a plethora of new technologies that you can unlock. I'm going to do 0G refineries because this adds additional mining station output to the mining stations we have constructed in space that are producing additional minerals and energy credits and various other resources for us. Okay, so now that our starbase is done in Alpha Centauri, you can see that our Empire's territory has in fact expanded to include the Alpha Centauri star system, and we can now colonize Alpha Centauri 3. We could also construct things like mining stations here. Alpha Centauri 5 has 6 minerals, so I'm going to construct a mining station there to get those minerals working for us. But the most important thing is colonizing Alpha Centauri 3. The 2 ways of doing that is by ordering your shipyard to construct a colony ship and then order the colony ship to the planet in question. But the much easier method is by selecting the habitable world you wish to colonize and moving your cursor over the colonize button. Press the A button to bring up a list of potential species that can colonize this planet. If our empire had more than just humans in it, we could select a different species to colonize this world. However, this is the only option we have because our empire consists of only humans right now. Once you select the species that's going to colonize the planet, you can then name the planet whatever you want. For the sake of this video, I'm going to call it Hi YouTube. You can name it just about anything you choose, but do be aware that there are profanity filters, so it can't be literally everything. There are some options you cannot pick. And by hitting OK, we have confirmed that we wish to colonize this planet. If we go back to our shipyard in the Sol Station, we can see that there is a colony ship under construction. Once it has finished constructing at the shipyard, it will automatically fly over to Alpha Centauri 3 and begin the colonization process. And that will take several years before it completes, but once it is done, we will be able to construct buildings and districts on it to produce jobs. So buildings and districts are super duper important. Once you have a planet that has been colonized, you can construct those said buildings and districts. Now, districts are for creating jobs that produce things like minerals, energy credits, and food, some very basic resources, whereas buildings are used to produce jobs for producing more advanced resources like consumer goods, alloys, or even Unity. So to add another district to your planet, you simply move your cursor over one of the 4 districts. There's 4 options available. There's a city district, a generator district, a mining district, and an agriculture district. I want to add more technician jobs to produce more energy credits. So I'm going to construct a generator district on this planet, and I want to increase the amount of alloys we're producing. So I moved the cursor down to one of these empty building slots. I'm going to construct an alloy foundry, and I'm also going to construct a second building. I want to increase our output of science, so I'm going to construct a research lab. So the district and the buildings that I just queued up show up in the build queue. They build one at a time. They do not build simultaneously. So once the generator district is done, then the alloy foundries will start construction, and then the research labs. And by constructing those districts and buildings, you make jobs available on that planet. Your populations will work those jobs to produce resources. I have a separate mechanics video going over jobs in greater detail if you wish to learn more about them. And I do have one about the various districts that are available to you in the game as well. Do be aware that districts, most of them function the same depending on what kind of empire you're playing, but they just might be named differently. For example, for a machine empire, they're not called city districts. They are called like nexus districts, for example, but they function the same. They provide some jobs and some housing for your pops to live in. So we can see that our shipyard has in fact finished construction of the colony ship. And if we go back to the Sol system by clicking the left stick with the shipyard selected, we can see that the colony ship is well underway to moving over to Alpha Centauri to colonize Alpha Centauri 3. And while we were talking earlier, we finished a couple new technologies. We need a new physics technology. Ooh, administrative AI. This one's really good because it gives you a 5% bonus to research speed in all 3 branches. This is a good one to pick this early in the game. And for society technology, biodiversity studies. That's a really good one too. This increases the amount of society research that we get from our researchers working in research labs. So it goes along with the previous ones where we did, for example, nanomechanics and quantum theory. Improving science is good. Getting your technologies faster is one of the best ways to progress and advance in Stellaris Console Edition. So our colony ship is getting close. We can see that our science ships have finished their surveying queues, so we can then queue them up to survey even more. But this video is pretty much coming to an end once this colony ship begins establishing a colony on Alpha Centauri 3. I will have covered all the major aspects of your first game of Stellaris Console Edition that I wanted to. And there we go. There's the alert, the first human colony, and there's a nice bit of flavor text regarding the colonization of your first new planet. So that's going to be it for this particular video. As I said, just covering the bare minimum basics, exploring the galaxy, constructing starbases to expand your influence in your territory, and colonizing a new world to expand your empire. Once this colony is online, you can see it in the outliner now. It is showing that it is in development, and its development will finish in the year 2212 at the 12th month of the first day. And once that has completed, you can then access it just like your home planet of Earth, construct districts on it, construct buildings on it to provide jobs for the population that is living there, and have them producing resources for your empire. So that's going to be it for this particular video. I really hope it was helpful and that you learned something, and that this eases the transition into trying out Stellaris Console Edition. Like I said, I think this is a fantastic game, and I do want to spread the word out about this game as much as possible. The more people that try it, the more people that watch my videos, so it's a win-win for me. Anyways, that's going to be it for this one. As I said, there is another video just like this one where none of the DLC is active. I recommend giving it a watch, as I may have gone over something in that video that I missed in this one. So it's kind of worth going through that one as well. It is also about an hour long, so give it a watch if you have the time, and check out my other Stellaris Console Edition videos. Also, take a look at the links in the description below. My Twitch channel, where I stream Stellaris Console at least once per week, typically on Tuesdays. My Twitter feed, which is a great way to keep in touch with me, and I post important announcements there all the time. And last but not least, my own personal Discord channel, which you can be a part of to interact with other viewers of my content, as well as partake in community-related events such as polls or possibly even giveaways in the future. This has been Mobius talking about Stellaris Console Edition. I hope you learned something in this video, and that I do see you again real soon. Until then, take care.